Ethan, Sarah, Marcus, and Lila had been driving for hours through the abandoned outskirts of Ashthorne, a forgotten town that didn't appear on most maps. Their college professor had dared them to explore the old Ashthorne Church, and their curiosity and the thrill of rebellion had led them here. The road ended abruptly at the edge of a dense forest, and there, rising like a jagged tooth against the gray sky, was the church. Its bell tower pierced the clouds, broken stained glass reflecting the dim light like fractured eyes. The air was heavy, wet with the smell of decay, and the wind whispered through the trees like the sighs of something long dead as they approached the entrance. The old wooden doors groaned and swung open at Ethan's touch. The smell hit them instantly foul, metallic, the unmistakable stench of blood and rot. Inside, the pews were not just old. Skeletal remains sat slumped across them, rib cages cracked, limbs bent at unnatural angles. Some faces were frozen in. Silent screams, others peeled halfway, exposing sinew that glistened like wet rope. Sarah gagged, but curiosity pushed her forward. The floorboards creaked under their steps, and every sound seemed amplified, echoing off the stone walls like the hollow heartbeat of the building itself. The first room they entered smelled worse than anything they had ever imagined. The walls were smeared with dry blood streaks, as if the building itself had vomited its victims across the stone. Faded portraits lined the walls, but the eyes weren't just painted, they seemed to weep. Dark, viscous fluid trickled from the corners of the frames, streaking the cracked plaster beneath. Marcus reached to touch one, and the fluid squirmed, tiny worms wriggling beneath the surface. He jerked back, skin crawling. Lila whispered that it felt alive. The others didn't dare argue. They moved cautiously, flashlights sweeping across the room, when a low, wet sound echoed from the basement. The door was cracked open, and from the darkness came a faint dripping, like the slow fall of blood from an unseen height. Each drop seemed louder than the last, striking the stone with a sickening plop. "Do we really want to go down there?" Sarah asked, but before anyone could answer, a gust of wind slammed the basement door open, pulling them forward as if the church itself had reached out for them. They descended. The stairs were slick with moisture and something else. Ethan's shoe caught on a patch of sticky, congealed matter that smelled like iron and death. Looking down, he saw crushed bones embedded in the steps, fragments of skull and vertebrae mixed with coagulated blood. The basement stretched endlessly, shelves lined with rotting objects, jars containing organs suspended in murky liquid, and crucifixes pinned with half-rotted human torsos. One was positioned as though offering a blessing, arms stretched out, skin peeled to reveal sinew that pulsed faintly, as if still alive. The air was thick, almost tangible, heavy with the sound of their own breathing and the faint, wet squelch of something moving beneath the floor. They pressed on, but the walls seemed to pulse, contracting and expanding with a slow rhythm that matched the hammering of their hearts' as they climbed the stairs to the first floor. The gore intensified. A torn, desiccated arm hung from the railing, still twitching. The banister was slick with blood and smeared with skin, pieces of flesh flaking like burnt paper under their fingers. A skeleton sat in the corner, jaw hanging open, but then its head twitched, eyes rolling in empty sockets. Lila screamed, and the others froze as they realized the corpses weren't just remains. They were animated, half dead, caught in eternal torment, observing them with hollow hunger. The hallway stretched endlessly, doors opening to reveal rooms filled with walls streaked in crimson, furniture splintered and soaked with old blood, and carpets matted with hair and gore. They could smell the iron tang in the air, feel it coating their throats, and hear faint whispers that seemed to come from the walls themselves, murmurs of suffering, of promises unfulfilled, of death waiting by the time they reached the second floor. The church had become something else entirely. The air vibrated with the pulsing of the bell tower above, though the massive bell had not been struck. Corpses were arranged deliberately, their bodies mutilated in patterns that made no sense but screamed of ritualistic intent. Flesh had been peeled, organs exposed and woven into grotesque tapestries. Small creatures crawled through open wounds, feeding on the exposed innards, and the smell was overpowering. Marcus stumbled over a ribcage, sending it cracking under his weight, and when he looked up, he saw a figure pinned against the wall, skin flayed and hanging like paper, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. It was still breathing, still alive. Lila vomited, covering the floor in bile and blood. They knew the bell tower awaited them, and the stairwell spiraled upward like a spiral into the mouth of some ancient predator. Each step was slick with blood, human and otherwise, and the walls were alive with movement, veins crawling beneath the plaster, maggots wriggling in and out of torn flesh, and shadows that weren't cast by anything they could see. Every floor revealed a new horror, a choir loft with skeletons arranged as if singing, but mouths stretched unnaturally, emitting high-pitched keening. Confessional booths containing torsos folded into unnatural angles, organs spilling from the openings. Windows shattered, letting in slivers of moonlight that revealed floors slick with blood, footprints of the damned leading nowhere. It was as if the church had digested every soul it had ever trapped, and now used them to decorate its interior with grotesque artistry. Reaching the top floor, the bell tower, they saw it in full. The bell was no longer metal. It was a monstrous creation of stitched human flesh and bone. Veins and muscles pulsed rhythmically across its surface, and skulls formed its base, grinning in permanent agony. The moment they touched it, a deafening toll erupted through the tower, vibrating their bones, forcing them to their knees. The bell's toll seemed alive, feeding on their fear. The floor beneath them buckled as sinew twisted and writhed, and their own bodies began reacting. Marcus screamed as his arms twisted unnaturally, skin splitting along the seams, revealing muscle that flexed in ways it shouldn't. Ethan felt his ribs compress, bones grinding together as the floor drank in his weight. Lila tried to run, but the door slammed shut and her legs were caught by sinewy tendrils rising from the floor, dragging her screaming into a pool of thick, blackened blood. Sarah looked on in horror as her friends' bodies were dismembered with a sickening precision, organs pulled from torsos and folded into the bell's flesh. Blood sprayed like rain from their torn bodies, mixing with the viscous ooze of the bell, as if it consumed every scream and every drop. She could feel it crawling on her skin, a sticky living thing that tried to pull her forward. When she resisted, her hands were sliced open by invisible razors, and the church laughed, an echoing, wet, guttural sound that made the walls tremble. The bell tolled again, and this time it seemed to call her name. Desperation pushed her to climb the spiral staircase. To the very peak, the air grew thinner, and the sound of her heartbeat became deafening. The bell tower's surface rippled as if alive, and when she reached the top platform, she realized the floor was lined with faces of previous victims, pressed into the flesh, mouths open in eternal screams. One of them blinked. Sarah froze. A hand shot out from the flesh beneath her feet, grabbing her ankle, trying to pull her down into the skin and bone maw. She kicked, screamed, and clawed at the surface, until her nails tore, but the grip was relentless. The bell tolled again, and with each toll, her limbs felt heavier, her blood boiling, bones creaking as they threatened to snap. By the time the sun would have risen, if it ever had, Sarah had been torn apart. Bits of her clothing, hair, and fragments of muscle now decorated the bell tower, feeding the grotesque construction, adding her to the mass of suffering that had existed for centuries. The sound of the bell became a dirge, echoing through the empty town, a warning to anyone who might dare approach. Outside, Ashthorne was silent, abandoned, waiting. The forest surrounding the church seemed to breathe, drawing the fog inward like a living thing. In the distance, travelers passing through the old road sometimes claimed to hear the faint tolling of a bell, a wet, grinding, unnatural sound that made their skin crawl and their stomachs turn. They spoke of shadows moving behind, broken windows, figures staring from the bell tower, eyes glinting in the dark, and some, the unlucky few, never returned, vanishing into the night, their screams absorbed by the walls, their bodies becoming part of the endless construction of horror that Ashthorne Church had built over centuries. Even now, the bell awaits, stitched with sinew and bone, pulsing with every soul it has consumed. The town sleeps, but the church never rests. Every echo of the toll calls to the curious, the foolish, the daring, drawing them closer. Those who enter find themselves swallowed by the walls, the floors, the very air, ripped apart limb by limb, their blood and flesh feeding the monstrous bell. It is patient, immortal, and hungry. The forest keeps its secret, but the faint sound of dripping blood, the smell of iron, and the whispers of the damned leak into the surrounding countryside. No one who dares to climb Ashthorne's bell tower ever leaves whole. Some vanish, some return in pieces, some leave only their eyes or hands behind. The church itself shifts, reshapes, as if breathing, as if alive, with the bell at its heart, calling, calling, calling for the next souls to feed its endless hunger. And the moment the tolling begins, you feel it in your bones, a vibration that crawls under your skin, rips at your muscles, and whispers your name in voices not entirely human. Those who hear it can never resist. Ashthorne waits. The church waits. The bell waits. The souls line the walls, a grotesque tapestry of despair, watching, waiting, ever hungering. There is no escape. Every footstep, every scream, every drop of blood only feeds it more. The town is a trap, the church a predator, and the bell is the maw that consumes all. Even as you read these words, somewhere the bell tolls again. Somewhere someone else feels the sinewy grip pulling at their ankles, the cold, wet hands of the dead dragging them closer to the apex. And when the toll ends, there's only silence and the faint, wet squelch of the next soul being claimed.
Please like and subscribe channel Fear Frequency for more horror stories. Thank you.